I want to welcome you and thank you very much for being here at our third town hall for Imperfect City, which is an acknowledged utopian city that is starting as a conversation and evolving into an exhibition that also extends to the city of Wilmington. So the gallery becomes a workspace for the production of utopian ideas. And we have a number of presenters here tonight who are going to join us, and we are actually Skyping two presenters in. Laura Hudson is going to be going first, and she's standing by. So, give her a warm DCCA welcome. And Laura's going to talk to us about her proposal for a festival for Imperfect City. So, without further ado, what we're going to do is let people talk. And since we have Laura on Skype, I thought it would be appropriate for us to ask her a couple of preliminary questions about her proposal while we have her. And then we'll say goodbye to her, and then we'll Skype in Eric Lashinsky, who is an artist from Houston, who's going to be an artist in residence here as part of the education program's artist in residency. And we can ask him a couple of questions, and he can stay on and participate in the meeting for the rest of the time. And then once we've heard from all of the presenters, we'll be able to open it up for a Q&A. And then we also wanted to, we can pass out numbers for people who, don't want to go first, so we can decide who goes first after we Skype people in. And once you are the chosen designated speaker, we'd like for you to come up and then, so that you're, in the middle of the group and present and use the computer as necessary. So I'll just go ahead and get started, and don't mind the photographer and videographer. Okay, with that said, I'm going to turn off the lights and let Laura take it away. So Laura, tell us about your proposal.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, hi. Wish I was there. Here in Seattle. So mine is celebrating our utopian community, and it's pretty open so far. I was hoping we could get a kind of party planning committee to work on it and decide that if we want, what exactly we wanted to celebrate, what were our values, and where we wanted to have it. I kind of envisioned it somewhere in the gallery, and we could even, decorate it. So it's, really boisterous festival, or kind of leave it an empty gallery space and have like really colorful outfits come in, or just what we wanted to decide. The other part of my plan was, I was interested, I'm a painter, so I'm interested in color, and I thought it would be great to have everyone come dressed in a solid color, and that color would be what they felt the most free in. So, an example would be like a sky blue, you're the most free, and a sky blue is kind of a classic color of utopia, I would say. And so my idea is that you would then have a video camera filming the whole event, and how people interacted would kind of, you sped up the video, you'd see how all the colors would interact. So maybe, all the greens kind of got together and decided that they, really got along, or maybe the colors just intermixed, but I kind of thought it would be interesting later on after the festival's over how these utopian colors would affect the social environment. So as far as the festival, I really love a party planning committee and have, we could decide, do we want games, do we want bands, do we want dancing, do we want alcohol, do we want, just kind of a calmer event, we just sit around and just chat. I guess I kind of think of a festival as a place to really let loose, so we could create an environment where people could come and let loose and really get to know and be comfortable around one another. That would be great. The second part of the plan is, so my artist practice is throwing events and then filming them and making these kind of life-size installations of paintings from the event. So I was interested in maybe, it could just be blank canvases, and then I add all the colors and make kind of an environment of color for people to come in later on in the gallery after the event that would represent the information gained about the colors of utopia, or perhaps I would make life-size paintings of the actual event as kind of a documentation, and the colors that I put into the paintings would come from the information gained about how people, how they felt the most free and what colors, so what kind of environment the paintings would make. That all said, I'm totally open to ideas, and I would love to work with anyone who'd be interested in this as well.
Okay, great. Does anybody have an initial question for Laura? It's sort of a lot of information to digest, but while we have her here, Laura, could you maybe tell us if this is a festival for a city that doesn't really know what it is as of yet, how would we celebrate it? And would it be a celebration of sort of flexibility and determinants? What would be the concept behind the festival, and could it be something that would be maybe at the end, or once all of these proposals have been kind of made manifest in the gallery or in the city?
Yeah, I was thinking it could kind of what we're actually celebrating kind of grow as all these proposals come in, as the idea of what the city is going to be grows. So we can kind of decide what we want to celebrate, and maybe we want to, right when the show opens, we're just like so happy to have this utopian that we're kind of, I guess it's like the chicken before the egg, or the egg before the chicken or something, kind of celebrate it right away, and maybe it's just the fact that we're feeling free or excited, or perhaps it's a festival we have at the end of the show, kind of celebrate as an end to everything. We celebrate what we've done and what we've created.
Anybody else want to ask Laura a question?
Well, Wilmington has a tradition of ribbon cuttings. They had one today for the theater, so maybe this could be the ribbon cutting for the city.
Did you hear that, Laura?
No.
Our director, Maxine Gaber, said that the city of Wilmington is kind of famous for its ribbon cuttings. We just had a ribbon cutting today for a new theater that opened up down the street. Maybe a ribbon cutting is in order for the festival.
Oh, to kind of start it all off, so we, I like that a lot.
Okay.
Cut the ribbons up. Yeah, here we go, let me party.
Really big scissors.
Really big scissors. Okay, anybody else? We'll probably have to move on to Eric Lashinsky pretty soon. Emily, questions, comments?
I was just wondering how it would be, but I guess this has come up with other projects, publicized and to whom, and maybe it's to everybody participating. I don't know. That's maybe a question related to overall projects.
Right. So the question is from Emily Artinian: how would the festival be publicized, and for whom? Who's the audience? And you said you wanted to work with the community. So would the community be the people at the town hall, us, or members of the community that you have yet to identify?
I would say that's still really open. I would love for the whole community to, come in and join the festival. So I think it would be open to the public, and then if someone in the public wanted to come help, plan the party or the festival, that would be great. And I think it's really open at this moment.
Okay. When do you get back from Seattle?
December 29th.
Okay, great. So hopefully by the next town hall meeting, you'll be in town and you can come here and be with us here in the DCCA auditorium.
Yes, definitely. I plan on it.
All right. We're going to say goodbye now, Laura. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye. Nice to meet you all.
Bye. All right.
Bye.
Okay, next we're going to hear from Eric Lashinsky, who's standing by in Houston, and we'll just give him a call. We're a little early. Might take him by surprise. It seems to... Oh, there we go. Eric? Yeah.
Let me,
Click your video icon.
I just have to do it.
Yeah.
Why? 1 second.
hold on.
No problem. We just have 30 people waiting, that's fine. No pressure.
Shoot. I don't know why my,
Want us to hang up and call you back?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think I was in another program when you called. For some reason that toolbox isn't showing up.
Okay. All right, bye. Okay, let's try that again. And Eric is somebody Jane has worked with over the course of several months to realize, years now, to realize Eric Lashinsky's residency. He's going to be here, was it February 4th? February 4th, and he'll be staying here at the DCCA and completing something called the People's Park. And it's going to be a park that's in the city of Wilmington. So the work that he does here will actually, become part of this public park. All right, let's give him a call again, see if this works. If it doesn't, we'll move on. All right. Hi, Eric. Welcome. Everyone, this is Eric. Everyone at the town hall meeting. We're delighted to meet you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Happy to be here.
Okay, great. So, won't waste any more of your time. Can you just give us a 5-minute synopsis of your project?
Sure thing. I guess I missed the introductions. I wouldn't make people go over that again. But, so the project is called People's Park, and there's a little history to it. I'm going to be a community artist in residence at the museum during the month of February. And this was something that I went through an application process a couple of years ago, and the project is finally happening this winter, and it happens to coincide with this exhibition, which is pretty convenient because I think a lot of the ideas that I'm interested in coincide with the exhibition. So the project, it started from this idea that there is a lot of on in downtown Wilmington, and I taught a class there a couple of years ago at DCAD, and I used to walk from the train station up to DCAD, and I noticed a lack of public space that was sort of missing from the larger redevelopment going on downtown Wilmington. You leave the riverfront, and there was no real place to congregate in downtown Wilmington on the stretch that I was walking. So I came up with this idea, creating a process to engage a specific site that I would be perfect as a park along Market Street Boulevard. And I had an interest in engaging 3 specific communities that I thought were stakeholders for downtown, but might not be part of the same process or not part of the process at all for creating downtown Wilmington. So those 3 groups are students, either at DCAD or at the technical college, business owners, proprietors of small businesses, and then homeless people, or transient community, or people that are recently homeless that happen to use a lot of public spaces more than just about anybody. So I wanted to engage with these 3 groups, and the process that I designed is something that happens in the museum and at the site. And as the project has kind of unfolded in my mind and coinciding with the exhibition, it's taken on a much stronger presence in the museum. And so initially it was really just about providing these 3 community groups with the tools that they might need to generate some ideas about this potential park site and share those ideas, and then those ideas will be presented on the site in some sort of installation format. Now, there's a certain sort of 2-phase project here. One happened in the museum, and I've curated a installation in the museum that involves some furniture a lot of discussion in certain shops. These communities also an entity that happens to be a museum, and that will unfold over the course of February and into and then the project shifts park site, and the ideas that generated during that museum gallery phase will then be transferred to the other site, be presented there. And you know, this vehicle.
Eric?
Is that right there?
Oh, if I can stop you there, we're having a little trouble hearing you. It's a little delayed. So I'm just going to kind of quickly translate kind of what you're saying to people here. What Eric's talking about is having two phases for this project. So phase one is the planning process for the actual park in the city. And he would create 6 drafting tables that would be on site that he would program with workshops for people to be able to come in and learn about the design process and basically partake in planning the park. So the actual drafting tables during phase 2, when he implements the park in a designated space within Wilmington, would actually be transformed into benches. So people could sit on them and they would become utilitarian objects. So there's this idea of, of this kind of furniture design becoming something that both gives birth to a process, a workshop in the gallery, but then also becomes this catalyst for conversation in a park. That's not all that will be in the park, but he's using the drafting tables as a kind of furniture link to the external reality that is the part of the second phase. So with that in mind, the questions that we had kind of wondered about once we received his proposal was, what will the programming here within the DCCA be? So when people come in, what kind of things will they be learning when they sit down at those drafting tables? How will those drafting tables be facilitated by him? So that's the question that, that we can pose first. I don't know if you're hearing me, Eric.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's yeah, no, it came through all right. A little background about my own practice. I have an architecture background. A lot of my projects tend to exist within an art context, and I'm really interested in design as a form of agency, where you can impact your surroundings, you can design the place where you live, you can change the reality around you, and I'm interested in helping others develop the skills to do that. So I've taught architecture and design for a number of years at universities, and what I'll be trying to convey to the participants in this project is really just a very basic skill set that relates to how to represent your ideas on paper. We might deal with models as well, and how to make models, and how to also work with scale. And so when you're thinking about a particular place that's bigger than you, how you can sort of bring that into the scale of your drawing space and work with your ideas at that, at the scale of a piece of paper rather than the full scale on site. And I'm going to sort of have a basic curriculum that'll unfold over a few weeks. The other component is really just talking about ideas for what people want to see at this site and how people use public space. And so there's going to be kind of schedule of workshops that are not drawing or model making related, but are actually just discussions about ideas, and I kind of want that to be a real open forum for how really what makes for an ideal small park and the kind of crazy ideas that could be happening there that might not normally happen there, and so the installation that I'm creating has some room for those ideas to be presented beyond the discussion, either on a pinup board or in a slideshow. And are you getting any of that?
Yes,
Is
we
that-
are.
Great.
Thank you, yes. Anybody want to ask a question? John?
Go ahead.
I was just curious how he came up with the 3 groups that he did.
Oh, yeah.
Students, businesses, and the homeless.
Students, businesses, and homeless as the identified groups involved in your project. How did you come up with that idea?
Yeah, those are through observation, really. You know, I spent a lot of time hanging out in cities and thinking about I've worked on a lot of projects that involve public space, and you know, in this context, in Wilmington, time I've spent in downtown Wilmington, those are really the groups of people that I thought would use this space more than anybody else, and or I should say, had some stake in it. There's a lot of other people that use public space in downtown Wilmington. These are 3 particular groups I thought could also offer particularly specific perspectives and unique perspectives on what public space should be and what it should offer. And I was interested in bringing those ideas together because they normally would not have a forum. So, yeah,
Okay.
that answers your question.
I just have a kind of reference to bring up. Occupy Wilmington, Occupy Delaware was in Spencer Plaza, right in the area that you're discussing, and that group was composed of those 3 groups of stakeholders, among others. And so it just strikes me that that's a good thing to look at as a reference for the project, and maybe connect up with a couple of the people who stayed there the longest. And it was really one of the very interesting Occupy sites.
Yeah.
It was the
And this
longest.
was
Sorry?
What's that, Eric? Oh, yeah. So Emily Artenian said that the site, basically, well, not the site, but the stakeholders that you've identified were those involved in the Occupy Wilmington movement, and they were basically integral to the Occupy Wilmington movement. So maybe identifying a couple of the representatives who were most involved in Occupy would be ideal people for you to meet when you're here, and maybe they would be helpful contacts for you.
In particular, because
that's a great idea. I admit, I'm not familiar with how Occupy Wilmington played out, so I'd be real interested in learning who was organizing that. And
great, we have an expert.
Say it again?
We have an expert for Occupy Wilmington, so she's here tonight, and you know, when you get here, we'll definitely make sure, and I can give you Emily's email if she lets me, and Emily, I'll pass Eric's email on to you if that's appropriate. Any more questions before we move on? No? All right, Eric, you're more than welcome to stay there, but it's probably more comfortable for you to sign off. It's up to you. Just, however comfortable you feel.
Yeah, I think I am going to sign up.
Okay.
I'm really interested in meeting everybody that's at the meeting tonight, and I'll be in Wilmington soon enough, so
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, we'll make the minutes available to you as soon as possible, okay? Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Sure thing.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to the next proposal. Who would like to go next? Any volunteers? Okay, Jules Brooke. Jules, welcome.
I was saying I didn't want to go first, but I don't know.
Oh, I don't want to go first. Okay. Well, I'm going to flip your proposal here.
Okay, because I don't have any slides or anything.
Okay, Jules, why don't you just introduce yourself really quickly for the sake of everyone who is here for the first time, and great.
So I'm Dr. Jules Brook. I work at the University of Delaware, and I'm in the landscape design department. So actually Eric's proposal is really interesting to me. I'm putting on a Philadelphia Flower Show exhibit that is highlighting process. So some of the things that he was talking about are really things that I've thought about before, and I think that could be a really interesting thing to try and do. And even though I was like approaching this as a landscape designer, I ended up thinking about focusing on water more than plants initially, because we've had so much drama lately with water, and we will continue to as climate changes. And urban environments are really dependent on how stormwater is managed in the cities. And not only are there the exact physical locations dependent on that, but the people downstream are particularly susceptible to whatever practices we have in our location. So one thing I think about frequently is that we're downstream from the fracking that's going on in northern Pennsylvania, or up in Pennsylvania. So what is the impact of that on us? What is the impact of those downstream from our city? So when we started thinking about it, and I'm working with two of my colleagues at University of Delaware, John Cox in the art department and Tony Middlebrooks in the leadership department, we decided we would try and follow the path of stormwater, urban stormwater, and try and connect that sort of invisible process to the reality of what really is happening to that water. So when the rain falls and it goes down your downspouts and it goes into the storm sewers, what's the end result? It kind of just disappears, right? But there's a lot more that we want to sort of reveal and make it a process that comes to light, and we daylight that process somehow. And I think in the ideal city, that process would be thought of almost as a first step. If we could start over with our city planning, we could really think about how stormwater could be managed in a much more respectable way. So that's one thing that we were thinking about, and we're working with a group of students who we've signed up, a multidisciplinary group of students to work with us in spring semester. And we're planning on doing video or photo documentation of some urban stormwater challenges, both floods and droughts, because we have both, and it'll be interesting to see storm pipes going into creeks, and just taking a photo compilation and displaying that here, and then also video interviews with citizens in Wilmington, just to get their perspective on what's going on with water, and the cleanliness of water, and where it's going, and what their opinions are about where things are going with stormwater and the pollution that's involved with it. Beyond that, we were also hoping that we could propose a day of really giving back to the city somehow. If we as a group can identify an area where there is high pollutant potential being washed into some of the urban creeks that would eventually get into bigger water streams, that we could plan a day where we would replant the banks and do some remediation work as a team. So that would be our real active component of the project, wherever that would take us. And I have no idea where that would be at this point, because we have to do the exploration. And then, we don't know what Imperfect City is going to turn out looking like, right? So I didn't know if we could maybe do something in the gallery with water, tubes, or I don't know what it's going to look like. So
bottle our own imperfect water.
Bottle our own water. So if there was anything else along the lines of what we could do in the gallery, beyond the photos and the videos, to make it more interactive for people. Somebody had thought of Float Your Wish for better water quality downstream, so it's almost like giving a wish to your neighbors downstream to say, I hope what we're doing is not affecting you in a negative way. So somehow it's just trying to make the stormwater management. And then the connection back to plants is that plants are there to clean the water. I mean, that's really what plants are best at. They are phytoremediation for the water. So that day of cleanup and that replanting, I think would sort of community well and bring us all together outside and educate and be a really nice installation.
Great, thank you, Jules. And everyone, please write down your comments and questions for the speakers, so that when we come back for the Q&A, we'll be able to jump back in and have pertinent questions. So good? Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Anyone want to volunteer to go next? John? Okay.
Do you have the PDF there and want to walk through?
Yes, we do. Yes. We have your PDF, absolutely. John, would you go ahead and introduce yourself again, please?
I'm John Muse. I teach at Haverford College. I've known Amazia for a few years now. I used to work more on exhibitions at Haverford. I came out from San Francisco in 2007 as a postdoc. I have an artistic collaborator named Gene Finley, who is not here, but here. Was here the last time in one of the last town halls.
Nothing? I have
No,
nothing.
I'm looking for mine.
Oh.
Give me my first picture.
Oh, okay. What's that? So this, okay, so you're saying that this is ready to go. Okay. All right. Go. Doesn't fit in the other side. So, okay, John, can we pull it up on your
Let's do
computer?
someone else. Then we can...
Okay, we'll come back to it.
Or yeah, I can plug in. Can we plug in?
We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. Lauren, do you want to take it away?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. All right.
Stand up.
I guess I'll stand up. Makes that easier. Okay, so my name is Lauren Ruth, and I'm an artist and sculptor. I live in Philadelphia, and I'm proposing a project that dovetails with my work, which is actually very much based on the idea of competition. I work with finish line configurations, so I've built a lot of banners, finish lines, and I'm very much interested in races, competition, and how those are related to or affect individual agency. So I'm proposing to create the DCCA Athletic Club as an extension of Imperfect City. And it would be a fully functioning running club, walking club, fitness group as well. And it would basically be based around the DCCA. Oh, so you're showing my work. Okay. Well, those are just some images of things I've made. So basically, instead of having athletes in the club, we would be art leads, right? So the idea is to kind of, how can we maybe combine athletics with art, or how can we use athletics as a form of art? So basically, the athletic club would embark on weekly runs from 2 to 3 miles. They can also be walks. And they would go, basically start at the DCCA and go to nearby areas. So down the waterfront, Market Street area, we could go to the Cool Springs Reservoir, which I haven't been to yet. And, but there are a lot of other kind of 2 to 3 mile loops that, we could kind of take the DCCA as a centerpiece. We can go around it like this, right? And really explore the whole perimeter around the DCCA. This is just a piece of a work where I ran the Philadelphia Marathon with the goal of finishing last. So I was kind of playing with the structure of the marathon, which is supposed to propel you forward in the shortest amount of time, and I was trying to say, how can I extend this for the longest amount of time? So similarly with this project, I'm trying to say, how can we use an athletic club to extend the museum into the city of Wilmington? Basically, the athletic club would be interactive, participatory, and we try to bring people in from lots of different areas of Wilmington. So maybe the YMCA's, there's 2 YMCA's, so we could get participants from there. There's a Delaware Running Club. Obviously, there's the DCCA membership and people who participate in DCCA activities, and then we can go from there. Also, let's see. Oh, and so this project, the DCCA Running Club or Athletic Club would be kind of also a central point or a foundation for another project that I'll be doing in conjunction with Imperfect City, but also this exhibition Drift, which is happening this spring as well. And at the DCCA. At the DCCA. So in the same vein of radical participation, I will be creating a marathon that progresses over the course of 2.5 months. So this is my little logo for the slowest marathon ever, which will be 2.5-month marathon, and basically this will happen by running the marathon in installments or in segments. So I will take basically whoever wants to participate, and we'll run the marathon in small pieces over a longer period of time. And so in a way that also makes the marathon much more accessible and a lot more fun, frankly, than an actual 26-mile race.
Can you bring your dog?
Absolutely. Okay. Dogs and cats and any kind of leashed animals are welcome. and walkers as well. So, but back to Imperfect City, I think the athletic club would be a way to bring in a new audience to the DCCA and also to extend Imperfect City out into the city itself. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Basically, I think that the physical component that would happen at the DCCA in the galleries could be, you know, stretching mats, a map of Wilmington with all the different running routes, a way for participants to propose other running routes, and you know, we could have T-shirts or anything, something like that as well for purchase if people wanted that. And we could also even do like a warm-up track outside the DCCA that kind of went around the perimeter as a way to, you know, when people gather here for runs, they could do the warm-ups. You know, we could do all that kind of stuff. And I've been a participant in many running clubs in the past. So I think I'll kind of use my past experiences as a way to pick and choose different activities to include in the athletic club. And I'd also be open to, you know, making it a more collaborative effort. And if someone wanted to do, you know, a yoga class or stretching sessions or some other kind of workshop, I think that would be really interesting to include as well. So, you know, basically the purpose of the running club or the athletic club would be to extend the museum out into the city, and in a way we can think of it kind of as a tour group. So maybe the athletic club is like a museum tour group, and instead of touring the museum, we're actually touring the city of Wilmington. Okay,
Great, thank you, Lauren.
thanks.
Question?
Yeah.
Or a comment about it. How are you going to lay out the segments? So like, how do
For
you?
drift?
Right. So are you going to rerun? You're not going to always start here. You're going to start.
Right. So in order to keep the project separate, I think with drift,
Right.
those runs would be curated by the runners doing marathons. So they would say, I want to run in this neighborhood or this neighborhood. And the overall idea is that at some point, instead of just running in the same parks that we're familiar with along the waterfront every time, we would actually go into neighborhoods that we might not necessarily go into, you know, places that we're not familiar with, and then maybe we could even talk to people in different neighborhoods and have them suggest routes, or have the runners suggest routes.
Are there existing athletic clubs in the city that you could, like YMCA's that are much more
Yes.
community-based, you'd be going to and say, we want to do this 1 mile segment and just coordinate, because then you can have a ready-made cohort of people who are so you don't have to say it's not a place we would run, because that immediately turns you into either maybe a good way of being a tourist and a not so good way. And I think if you can connect with any existing running clubs anywhere in the city and then have them actually be the co-curators, then I think that takes the museum out of the museum and brings something, does an inside out thing. Really great. It's fantastic. I really like the drift of the whole project.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it too, right? If we can, you know, go to a YMCA and then have them curate a run,
Right.
and then they can bring in their whoever wants to come from their group. So in a way, we way to bring multiple different groups together. And of course, there's a Delaware Running Club and all these running clubs. I'm also interested in how can non-runners become involved. Yeah.
Is it very slow?
I mean, it will definitely be slow, and there's also going to be different pace groups, obviously. So slower, there'll be walkers, there'll be runners, you know,
Okay.
multiple groups.
We can revisit. Let's move on to the next presenter.